Git. It's something we love and we hate, something that many developers are using on a day-to-day basis, grappling with thinking they understand and always hitting strange problems that don't entirely make sense. It's also one of these things that everyone does differently, despite everyone saying there's a standard way. There isn't. But it has largely stayed pretty similar for some time. Now, there's a new project, a new desktop application out and about, actually created by one of GitHub's original co-founders, Scott Chasson, and it's called GitButler, and it attempts to add some new things to Git. So I met some of the team at FOSDEM in Brussels earlier in the year, and I thought it was high time I got my hands on GitButler to see what it's all about. So let's get started. There is, of course, just a disk image you can download. It has mostly been available for macOS recently, but now there is a Windows version. But thankfully, as a good developer macOS user, there is also a homebrew Cask formula, and that's what I will use to install it. This is the website over at gitbutler.com. Gives you a rough idea of what to expect. Its basic concept is to add these virtual lanes, these virtual branches of your work on top of normal Git branches. So you can move backwards and forwards between changes in GitButler virtual branches, and those changes can be on one file or on multiple files without actually having to create proper Git branches and jump backwards and forwards much more fluidly, basically. It is open source. It's also interesting in its architecture because it is using Tauri, a project I featured on the YouTube channel some time ago and has been long overdue a revisit, but that is what they are using to create a fairly optimized cross-platform application. So let's step through some of the basics of setup after installation. Various things we do or don't want to opt into. And it's interesting because you cannot sign up and just use it like a quote-unquote normal Git GUI, which I am a fan of, actually. But I will sign up, otherwise there's not a tremendous amount of point showing the application. I will do that with GitHub. So now we can add a new project. So I'm using this project as an example. It sort of works in my mind because it's a cross-platform application. I'm often doing a lot of testing and switching backwards and forwards between different branches to see the code I am working on. So for example, here is going to be sort of the basis of this experiment. I have a React branch, but I'm also trying to create a React Native branch and a React that uses Tauri branch. So I'm going to use the React branch as kind of the kickoff for using GitButler. So now GitButler set up, I can add a new project, find the folder, and then we go through the setup steps. I mean, if I was doing this for real, I probably would pick main, but I'm going to use React for now. Let's enable these AI features because why not? Everything's got to have AI these days. Continue, use a Git executable. I won't bother testing it, I know it works, and let it do its setup. Behind the scenes, it's now created this special branch for GitButler with a commit as well. Doesn't change anything, any of the commits, just created it. And this is where I sometimes find that things can be a little bit fiddly with sort of getting this to work. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make some very simple changes in this README. Okay. So we have one change in the README here. Test one, and it's recognized that, and you can drag that to a new virtual branch with that change. Then I'll just sort of scroll down a bit somewhere. This is where I found it can be a little bit pedantic in that sometimes if the commits are too close to each other, it groups them together. I don't really know what that's about. So this should hopefully be treated as a different one. No. Oh yes, there we go. So it's coming off this virtual branch, yeah. So this is test2, we could leave it here, but we'll actually create a new branch. And now in the same file, there's basically one change there. And scroll over, one change there. And I could keep going, but I think that's probably enough. And this is the thing, we can keep these changes separate from each other. So maybe I'll go here, call it test2A instead. And that change is being tracked there. We can call this test1B. And that change is being tracked there. This change is now done, shall we say. So we'll give it a name, and you can see that's changed there. There's also some other things here. And we'll commit it. Sure, let's generate a message. Why not? See what happens. What's the worst that can happen? It's only AI. Sure, that'll do. Commit it. So this is now kind of in its own local branch. I could create a pull request based from it. I think I will leave that alone for now. Push to remote. Let's do that and see what it looks like. And now if we look on the remote branch, here's the branch that was committed and the change here. So it'll be very interesting, of course. There we go. Pretty much what you expected, I think. And then the big promise, of course, is we can keep working on this change and we can keep working on this change, and they're kept separately from each other, sort of tracked in one place here, but pushed out to two different actual Git branches, shall we say. Of course, it doesn't have to apply just to one file. It can be different files as well. So I've made a new file here. Let me switch in, and you can see it's in this current branch. And we should be able to drag this to another virtual branch, and that's being tracked over there. You can also do a bunch of just kind of normal Git functions in the UI. So squashing commits, for example, you can see that little squash text pops up. There we go. Undo commits. I mean, these are just sort of visual versions of things you can do elsewhere. Interesting though, because that still is there. We can just discard it, I guess. You can also discard changes. There we go. You can also amend commits. So let's make this change. Sure. Let's do a generate message again. There we go. Seems reasonable. And make a change. Then we just drag this change onto it. You can see amend pops up, and there we go. You can see over here that these are the branches that have got to remote. Some of the ones just created, but then some existing ones. So if we want to bring these into the flow, select it here. Then it shows up kind of normal, unapplied, as it says here. And we can apply it. And now, in theory, we're working off of this, although it's sort of merged in some of the other changes as well. Let's see if we can make a change here. So we'll just give it a different name. Although I think that just, we haven't really started anything yet. Let's, hopefully this isn't going to override anything. Sure. And now, yeah, so now we can start creating virtual branches from it, basically. So that's how you can bring in. I found that it can get confused quickly. So I was trying with some of these other branches and things didn't work quite so smoothly. It could also just be that the history of this repository is also a bit messed up from me switching backwards and forwards. So it may not necessarily be GitButler's fault in this case, but I guess it has to factor in the fact that Git repositories are not always that clear-cut when you bring them in to something. And that is basically it. There are some other features that they are working on that you can see sort of mentioned in the blog and the documentation, but they've also mentioned that some of those are on pause whilst they figure out some of the core features, the virtual branches. So the timeline feature they mention is one that used to be there, and they bring it back in the future. And I guess they will attempt to monetize the project in the future by team support. This really feels like something that worked very well with teams. You can pass these virtual branches backwards and forwards. That sounds like a bit of a challenge to accomplish through a kind of Git backend. So I guess they'll have their own backend on top of it, but this is all conjecture for now. You can find more about it at gitbutler.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know your experiences. I like the concept, but I have found that it was a bit fiddly to get to work. It's using a somewhat fickle system under the hood to get its tricks to work, I suppose. But anyway, I'd love to hear from you. You can always find more about me at christianscheller.com, of course. And please leave an aforementioned comment, subscribe, share with your friends. And thank you very much for joining me, as always. And take care, everybody.